From Slovenia to Greece, from Greece to Germany, from Germany to France, a continent that is dominated by football, Europeans are also kinda good at playing basketball. Currently, the best player on the planet is European. There are more and more young prospects from Europe that are getting drafted and signed by NBA organizations, and honestly, it's great. But some of you that were born in the States don't really have a clue how basketball in Europe really works. There are many leagues in the old continent. At the very top you have EuroLeague, the second best competition in the world behind obviously National Basketball Association. Playing in the EuroLeague gives you the highest chances outside of the States to make or even come back to the NBA. The league's selling point is obviously the fans and the atmosphere. There's a high chance that the crazy basketball videos you've seen of crowds singing and jumping, that's EuroLeague, where every single game matters as it's the most competitive basketball league on the planet. Going one ladder down, we have EuroCup and FIBA Champions League. I will later on in the video explain the beef between EuroLeague and FIBA and how it divides European basketball. But even though it's technically one ladder down from EuroLeague, in reality it's multiple steps behind in players' talent level, basketball level, arenas, finances, as the best European organizations are playing in EuroLeague. So these are your continental leagues, consisting of teams that also play in national leagues that are in every single European country. So for example, you can have a team from Germany playing in their national league while at the same time competing in EuroLeague or Champions League against other teams from different nations. So it's not like the leagues are a coherent one-punch basketball entity. EuroLeague is a closed league, you can be promoted by winning EuroCup, but overall, all leagues from different countries are looking how to benefit themselves. There's no unity in European basketball. And so this pyramid is basically players' POV. How most NBA-bound athletes that went undrafted or was suddenly not wanted by their teams shape up in Europe, level by level, competition by competition, to be in the best position to make a comeback to the NBA or to play at the top European level. Obviously, this also perfectly applies to homegrown players who maybe weren't as talented as Luka Doncic at the very start of their careers, and they made slower steps going from local league to maybe EuroCup, then to EuroLeague, and then to NBA. What many Europeans don't admit or say is that European leagues are dominated by American players. Americans are leading the leagues in every single individual category, but that's the beauty of European basketball. When Luka Doncic was owning everyone in Spain, some of the guys he was playing with and against was NBA echelon athletes. One of them nowadays actually works as an analyst and was one of the few basketball personalities in the States that believed in Luka. I feel that NBA's talent threshold with every season just keeps increasing and increasing. There are an insane amount of skilled NBA players, and some of them sadly doesn't meet that skill threshold, which means that they're quickly snapped by European teams. And this is wonderful. Every single year I'm patiently waiting which bigger European team will sign an ex-NBA player. It gives a great flavor to the competition, seeing how an athlete that just a year ago balled out in the strongest basketball league can perform here in Europe. Also, it's beneficial to the local guys to train and play against players with such experience. Speaking of young players, I follow Asian basketball a lot and how they develop their prospects, and one thing stood out to me: everything is so much easier back in Europe. And what the hell do I mean by that? When Luka started playing in Olympia's basketball school back in Slovenia, the coaches were quick to notice that, well, he's good. Luka was only 8, but the coaches decided to move him to an older basketball group to train and play against 12-year-olds. When he was 13, Luka's environment made the best decision that drastically affected his career path to the NBA. Doncic moved to Spain. Now, Spain, in my opinion, has to have the best youth development programs in Europe, alongside obviously Serbia, but Spain has the best training and playing conditions to offer. Also, their leagues are highly diverse, meaning that you have young players coming from different basketball backgrounds like other European countries, Africa, Latin America. For example, players from Argentina usually played in Spain before making a jump to the NBA. But even in Spain, Luka was a 13-year-old earning MVP accolades playing against 16-year-olds. When he was 15, Luka played against 18-year-olds. And Luka's professional debut in the first Spanish league where men play came in the 2015 season when Doncic was just 16, becoming the third youngest player in Spanish League's history behind only Ricky Rubio and Angel Rebolo. By the way, Ricky became a professional basketball player at the age of 14, and when he was 18, he was just casually playing in the Olympics, representing his country against Team USA. So Luka Doncic became a senior member of Real Madrid's team, meaning that Luka trained with players that in the past had the pleasure to play in the NBA. Rudy Fernandez, Gustavo Ayon, Anthony Randolph, Jeffrey Taylor, Sergio Rodriguez, Andres Nacione, Trey Tompkins, not even mentioning a legend like Sergio Yul, who refused the deal from the Houston Rockets. Luka even played against the Boston Celtics in a preseason game. Later that year, Doncic debuted in the EuroLeague, becoming the 21st player to debut in the league before turning 17.
Doncic left alone. He'll try it again. Three-pointer, second one for the 16-year-old.
And no, this doesn't happen that oftenly, meaning we don't have a bunch of teenagers in different leagues playing heavy minutes. In fact, I would say that EuroLeague's talent pool is getting older, and it's getting more and more difficult to compete against the college system in the States and the G League. Mainly because player wages has been stagnant for decades in all of Europe. Also, if you're young, it's hard to earn minutes in EuroLeague, so choosing alternative options like Australia, the States, that sometimes even pay better money has been pretty popular amongst both young and more experienced players. So if you're a player from Europe, there's many options to choose from. There's many different journeys to different countries, different leagues, different continents. There's no one route to go, and all basketball schools are inclined to develop a player to compete in the top level, which to most Europeans is both the EuroLeague and NBA, and this doesn't get mentioned a lot. Ask any European fan or athlete who was their role model growing up when it comes to basketball. Most of them will give you several answers. One player will be European, another player will be an NBA legend. For example, Luka Doncic grew up watching Vasilis Panolis and LeBron James, and from my personal experience, I grew up idolizing Allen Iverson, but obviously, I had to mold my playstyle to someone who played locally. And this is a huge problem in Asia, simply because they're addicted to NBA and only NBA basketball with their star players, and they don't understand that NBA athletes are not humans, and most of the things that they do cannot be replicated or done in a youth system environment. Also, Asian basketball, and specifically Philippines, have bullshit regulations that prevent young players from playing against professionals in their first league. It's definitely a cultural problem simply because people from Asia put an emphasis on education and having a diploma, but you can develop a basketball player and at the same time a lawyer or a doctor. Also, they don't like to face the fact that their league is not the strongest one and their prospects should look for options in more competitive leagues. For example, European smaller countries and their basketball environment encourage younger players to move abroad. Could you just imagine Luka's career path if Slovenia's federation blocked his departure to Spain? Not saying that it's even possible, or that EuroLeague would have an age limit and Luka couldn't play in the highest level simply because he's too young. It's ridiculous. If you're good, you're going to play in a tournament matching your level. Luka Doncic is an embodiment of European basketball system. Every single season, every single year, Luka has been challenged to play against older and better players. He was always challenged to go out of his comfort zone. Luka never dominated one tournament continuously. He was always asked to do more. And when you're at the top, no one is babysitting you. Luka didn't play because he was young and had enormous talent. Well, partially maybe. But the main reason why he got a roster spot on a team filled with NBA level players was that yes, he had talent, but he also had the mentality and maturity to make winning plays. Because believe me, a team like Real Madrid or any European team will not tank or lose and sake for you to develop. As I said before, no one will babysit you when you're playing in top European leagues. Also, let's not forget about the fact that some European youngsters like Jokic and Doncic played in those hostile Balkan atmospheres when they were just kids. And I think it does have an impact to how Luka and Nikola is so unfazed even during the most down-to-the-wire moments in the NBA.
We're going to have to get a hold of this one, but even though, in all probability, the game was over.
Now let's talk about the type of basketball that is being played in Europe, how it helps to develop certain basketball skills, and let's try to answer the controversial question. Why, according to some players like Luka and Giannis, it's easier to score points in NBA compared to FIBA.
The game in Europe is way harder than the game in the NBA, and I don't want to disrespect.
Notice how I said FIBA. What's the difference between EuroLeague and FIBA? FIBA is the governing body of basketball worldwide. While you have leagues like NCAA, NBA that formulates their own rules, FIBA defines international basketball rules. FIBA also organizes all of the international basketball games, including the World Cup, European Championship, Asian Cup. When you see players representing their countries during the summer, it's not EuroLeague, it's not Eurocup, it's FIBA. But EuroLeague, just like all leagues all across the planet, obviously excluding NBA and NCAA, follows FIBA's basketball rules. And there's an existing conflict between already mentioned basketball entities. At the very start of the 2000s, EuroLeague was a part of FIBA's organization. But when EuroLeague, alongside the richest and the most popular clubs from Spain, Italy and Greece, decided to take over the competition and split away from FIBA, that was the beginning of their beef. FIBA was and still is unhappy that EuroLeague has a basketball monopoly when it comes to professional clubs in Europe, as the best organizations compete in EuroLeague. And everyone is playing both sides. Federations and national leagues are siding with both the EuroLeague and FIBA, trying to maneuver things as diplomatically as possible. I don't want to expand on this topic too much. As I mentioned before, there's no unity when it comes to basketball in Europe. You're splitting basketball in a continent that's already struggling to make the sport popular and, most importantly, profitable. So FIBA's rules. As some of you may already know, FIBA has a smaller court compared to the NBA, but the important difference is the shorter 3-point line combined with no 3-second violation in the boxed area on defense, and I have a great example. So firstly, how do NBA players attack the boxed area? Right here, Jalen Brunson has a mismatch against Brook Lopez near the sideline. He chooses not to rush as he's probing the boxed area as Jalen is waiting for Chris Middleton to get out of the lane. Because Jalen knows that Chris eventually has to mark someone. He can't sit in the paint without picking someone to defend because that's a 3-second violation. So Jalen is carefully tracking Middleton, and whenever he turns his head away from Jalen to pick Mitchell Robinson, Brunson attacks the paint and the help is late. Let's go to FIBA, a quite different situation. Poor communication between the Lithuanians as they don't protect the sideline, but hold on. You see JV casually chilling in the lane, not defending anyone, acting as the second held defender. His man Banchero is out of the box while Giannis is inside the painted area alone, and let's count when Giannis entered the box and for how long did he stay there. I count exactly 3 seconds, so in the NBA it would definitely be a violation. Also, you can see how much a traditional slow center like JV benefits from not needing to move out of the paint. And so whenever Luka Doncic says that yeah, it's easier to score in NBA compared to FIBA, it doesn't mean that Europeans are some kind of semi-god defenders. It's quite the opposite. And I can't express enough how both Europeans and Americans need to understand this. NBA is all about individual defense, and this play Ivica Zubac cannot go deeper and try to anticipate Jalen's drive because once again, defensive 3 seconds. And there's a lot of space for Jalen to work with on the left side of the court, so Paul George has to do a great job defending one-on-one by keeping Brunson in front of himself, but PG fails to do that and Zubac is late to contest Jalen's layup. In FIBA, that space doesn't exist, it's not there, even when you have favorable matchups. Right here, Ant takes out for a walk Johannes Voigtman, a pretty slow 7-footer, but he can't ISO him one-on-one because Daniel Theis is lurking in the paint, so Edwards has to opt for a contested jump shot. So having the defensive 3-second violation in mind and considering that centers are heavily involved in PNR actions, NBA defenses to counter the problem of their main rim protector being out of the boxed area have wing players like Jaren Jackson Jr. roaming around the paint, acting as the secondary help defender. And modern NBA defenses are based on strong wing defenders that are elite at covering spaces and leaping towards opposition players to contest their shots. Jaren's job is to operate just a step away from the painted area in the dunker spot and constantly slide whenever the opposition beats the first line of defense. That's basically NBA defense 101. But when you take the defensive player of the year and ask him to mark opposition centers in the box, a player that technically speaking doesn't even defend his matchups directly in the NBA, you have fundamental lapses. Jaren Jackson struggled in defending players that were backing him down in the paint. It's not like Jackson was never asked to throw elbows in the painted area for the Grizzlies, but in FIBA that was his main task. And you probably hear this a lot, European fundamentals. What is that? So as I showcase the defensive differences from NBA to FIBA, it means that naturally with FIBA's system and rules, Europeans are being trained to know fundamentals, like off-ball movement, passing, defensive positioning, playing back to the basket, understanding spacing, rebounding, and even here, I can give you a great example. Most NBA teams are concerned with allowing transition points, so they want to go back to the defense as swiftly as possible by not crashing the boards aggressively on offense. So defensive rebounding is pretty much simple in the NBA. That's why you have players like Sabonis recording a double-double before the halftime. Meanwhile, European basketball, firstly, they don't really have that many players that are athletic monsters in the open court compared to the NBA, but they do like crashing the boards, especially when you're trying to play small ball. And it was evident to me that in the last World Cup, the American players that again were the most talented team in the tournament struggled with fundamentally simple aspects of basketball, boxing out, help defense, positioning. They seemed weirded out by the lack of space offensively. Naturally, these rules creates a system where you need to put an emphasis on team defense and team offense, which then means you're developing players that have to have the knowledge of my already mentioned aspects, and the whole game becomes more fundamental compared to NBA. Meanwhile, if you studied what I just said, it shouldn't surprise you why some Europeans, when they come from FIBA to NBA, struggle with their defense. Every single EuroLeague's MVP had those struggles. You're just required to defend spaces that you've never seen before. Offensively, you're getting used to a different role with limited touches. Another difficult challenge that most Europeans say, fuck it, I'm 28, I'm going back to Europe. And I wouldn't say that European coaches neglect individual player skills. I know for a fact that some basketball schools forbid playing pick and roll actions in games until certain age groups or zone defense, while at the same time training players to play positionless basketball in hopes to raise individually strong hoopers. But it's still not an environment where you can grow strong ISO players. That's why Europeans, specifically in recent years, haven't been developing decent perimeter players. Like in the past, I remember Europe having many talented guards leading their teams. Nowadays, you see American players taking their spots. So FIBA's rules are not great in developing guards, but when it comes to big 7-footers, the lack of space requires good spacing. Spacing requires outside shooting. That's why historically every single big European that went to the NBA, well in most cases obviously, were able to spread the floor with their outside presence, combine the fundamentals and skills that they acquired in Europe, and with all that freedom and space in the NBA, it of course takes time to adjust to the speeds and athleticism and numerous other changes, but overall it's easier for them to get buckets compared to what they were used to in FIBA. And then when we take American centers, most of them are athletic rim runners that were developed to dominate in the paint. So while AAU basketball programs develop excellent perimeter players, nowadays I'm not even sure which American center is elite. When we talk specifically players at the center position, all I can think of is international players. And the reason why some American athletes struggle with having solid fundamentals is that usually they play a single season in their respective college programs. So most college hoopers play a couple of years of organized basketball, sometimes less, sometimes more, every story is different. But usually that's not enough to learn the intangibles of basketball, how to set screens or shoot a ball, or how to play in a team. They don't have time to learn the X's and O's of basketball in a year, so they start learning and developing when they come to the NBA. But when you take rookies like Malcolm Brogdon, who finished 4 years of school, the day Malcolm entered the NBA he was 24, he was already a solid player, similar situation to Europeans. Obviously every player's background differs, but when Luka Doncic was a 19-year-old rookie, he spent last 3 years playing professionally for Real Madrid. Also, let's not forget FIBA's Eurobasket, and playing alongside Goran Dragic, like it's a completely different bag of experience. And that's what makes the Europeans special. Whenever they make it to the league, they already have years of understanding how professional basketball works, which makes the transition to NBA a bit of an easier process.